In World War II's winter campaigns, the deadliest enemy wasn't gunfire, it was the cold. The brutal winter conditions were an adversary that no amount of training could fully prepare soldiers for. The freezing temperatures, relentless snow, and biting winds created a battlefield where survival was as much about enduring the elements as it was about facing the enemy. Frostbite, hypothermia, and trenchfoot sidelined more soldiers than bullets, especially in battles like the Bulge. These conditions were not just minor inconveniences, they were debilitating and often life-threatening. Frostbite could turn fingers and toes black, leading to gangrene and amputation. Hypothermia could set in quickly, causing confusion, loss of motor skills, and eventually, death if not treated promptly. Imagine being trapped in a frozen foxhole, gear-soaked, no fire, and the temperature plunging below zero. The cold seeped into every bone, making even the simplest tasks feel monumental. Soldiers had to keep their weapons and equipment functioning despite the freezing conditions, which often meant using their own body heat to thaw out frozen parts. Your only defense? Your body heat and whatever clothing you had. Layers of wool and whatever else could be scavenged were essential. Soldiers would wrap themselves in blankets, newspapers, and any other material that could provide even a modicum of insulation. The cold was a constant gnawing presence that never let up. The cold didn't care about courage or training. It drained energy, dulled minds, and could stop a heart. Exhaustion set in quickly, and the mental toll was immense. The constant shivering and the struggle to stay warm made it difficult to focus on anything else. The cold was an equalizer, affecting everyone regardless of rank or experience. Survival meant mastering the elements, not just the enemy. Soldiers had to become adept at building makeshift shelters, using whatever materials were available to create windbreaks and insulation. They learned to recognize the signs of frostbite and hypothermia in themselves and their comrades, and they developed strategies to keep each other warm and alive. Morale crumbled as the cold turned every night into a fight for life. The psychological impact of the cold was profound. Nights were the worst, with temperatures dropping even further and the darkness amplifying the sense of isolation and vulnerability. Campfires provided some relief, but they were often small and insufficient to combat the relentless cold. Diaries from the front described the misery. Being cold was often more terrifying than combat. Soldiers wrote about the endless shivering, the numbness that crept into their limbs, and the fear that they might not wake up if they fell asleep. These personal accounts provide a haunting glimpse into the daily struggle for survival. Soldiers weren't just fighting an army, they were fighting nature itself. The winter weather was an omnipresent force that shaped every aspect of the war. Blizzards could obscure vision and make movement nearly impossible, while the cold sapped strength and morale. The environment was as much an enemy as the opposing forces. Improvisation became essential. Issued gear was basic, so knowledge was the real lifesaver. Soldiers had to get creative, using whatever they could find to improve their chances of staying warm. They learned to make makeshift stoves, insulate their clothing with straw or leaves, and even create windbreaks out of snow and ice. Understanding heat, moisture, and insulation became a matter of life and death. Soldiers quickly learned that staying dry was just as important as staying warm. Wet clothing could freeze and become a death sentence, so drying socks and other gear by the fire was a nightly ritual. Insulation techniques such as layering and using natural materials were crucial for survival. The hard lessons learned in Europe's frozen mud led to one of the most effective cold-weather survival hacks ever devised. Soldiers discovered that wrapping themselves in blankets and then covering the blankets with a waterproof layer could create a microclimate that retained body heat. This technique, along with others, became standard practice in cold-weather survival training. Even today, the lesson stands: if you can't manage your body temperature, you've already lost. Modern cold-weather gear has come a long way, but the principles remain the same. Proper layering, moisture management, and insulation are still the keys to surviving an extreme cold. The lessons learned during World War II continue to inform how we approach cold-weather survival today. Nature always has the final say. No matter how advanced our technology becomes, the raw power of nature remains a formidable force. The winter campaigns of World War II serve as a stark reminder of the challenges that come with fighting in extreme conditions. The cold was an enemy that demanded respect and ingenuity, and it left an indelible mark on those who faced it. In the cold, not all materials are equal. For For soldiers on the front lines, the difference between fabrics could mean the difference between life and death. When temperatures plummeted and the wind howled through the trees, every layer mattered, but one item stood out above the rest. The World War II wool blanket was a soldier's secret weapon. It wasn't flashy, and it wasn't new technology, but it was trusted. Issued to millions, this humble blanket became a lifeline in the harshest conditions, offering warmth and comfort when hope seemed far away. Wool's magic? It insulates even when wet, unlike cotton, which becomes a death trap. Cotton soaks up water and clings to the skin, chilling the body and sapping precious heat. But wool, with its unique structure, keeps working even in the worst weather. Wool can absorb up to 30% of its weight in moisture and still feel dry, thanks to its air-trapping fibers. Each strand of wool is like a tiny spring, crimped and coiled to trap pockets of air. This natural insulation is what keeps warmth in and cold out, even when the blanket is damp. In a damp foxhole or snowy forest, this was a lifesaver. Soldiers could wrap themselves up, knowing that even if the blanket got wet from snow or rain, it would still help them retain body heat. In the mud and misery of war, that meant everything. Even after a night of heavy rain or a day spent trudging through snow, a wool blanket could be wrung out and used again. It dried quickly compared to other materials, and its resilience made it a favorite among those who understood its value. Synthetics often fail when soaked or packed with snow, but wool's natural lanolin and crimped texture keep it resilient. The lanolin, a natural oil found in wool, helps repel water and adds to the blanket's durability. Unlike modern synthetics, which can lose their loft and warmth when wet, wool keeps performing. Even drenched, a wool blanket kept soldiers warm. Around the campfire, you'd see steam rising from wet wool as it dried, but the soldier inside stayed protected from the chill. This was more than comfort, it was survival. Lying on frozen ground, surrounded by snow and condensation, wool worked with the body, pulling moisture away, holding heat in. It created a microclimate, a small zone of warmth and dryness, even when the world outside was bitterly cold. This ability to manage moisture and warmth was the cornerstone of survival. Soldiers learned to trust their blankets, using them as ground pads, makeshift shelters, and even as emergency stretchers. The wool blanket was more than just bedding, it was a tool for staying alive. The wool blanket wasn't just comfort, it was technical gear, far ahead of its time. Its design was simple, but its performance was unmatched. In an era before high-tech fabrics, wool was the original miracle fiber. Soldiers who understood this protected their blankets fiercely. They guarded them from loss or theft, knowing that a missing blanket could mean a sleepless, freezing night, or worse. They learned that survival depended on how you used your gear, not just what you had. A wool blanket could be a shield, a bed, a cloak, or a lifeline, depending on the situation and the soldier's ingenuity. The wool blanket, heavy and scratchy, was often the difference between life and death. Its weight was a small price to pay for the warmth and security it provided on the coldest nights. It was the unsung hero of the winter front. While weapons and rations were essential, it was the wool blanket that kept hope alive through the long, frozen nights. Sometimes, the simplest gear saves the most lives. In the end, the humble wool blanket proved that true innovation doesn't always look high-tech, it just has to work when it matters most. The real genius was how soldiers used their wool blanket, with an outer waterproof layer. A poncho, tarp, or even tar paper became a vapor barrier, trapping warm air and blocking wind and moisture. This created a personal microclimate, turning body heat into a furnace. The wool trapped heat and managed moisture. The outer layer kept warmth from escaping. Wrapping the blanket loosely, not tightly, preserved insulating air pockets. The poncho sealed the system, like a double-pane window. Soldiers would lay the poncho down, wrap in the blanket, and fold the poncho over, creating a taco shell shelter. This simple setup kept them warmer and drier through sub-zero nights. Survival wasn't about more layers, but smarter use of what you had. Knowledge of air, moisture, and insulation was worth more than any extra blanket. This isn't just history, it's a survival skill you can use today. The lessons learned from the past are just as relevant now as they were decades ago, and knowing how to protect yourself from the cold can make all the difference in a crisis. Whether you're hiking in the wilderness, facing a winter power outage, or simply preparing for the unexpected, these techniques are practical and potentially life-saving. The principle is timeless: an inner insulating layer and an outer waterproof barrier. This two-layer system traps your body heat while keeping out wind, rain, and snow. The inner layer, like wool or fleece, holds warmth close to your skin, while the outer layer, such as a tarp or rain jacket, blocks moisture and cold air. It's a simple concept, but it's the foundation of effective cold weather survival. Modern gear, fleece, sleeping bags, tarps, or even trash bags, can replicate the system. You don't need expensive equipment. Even a large plastic trash bag can serve as a waterproof shell in an emergency. The key is to improvise with what you have, layering materials to maximize warmth and protection. Many outdoor enthusiasts now carry lightweight emergency blankets and compact tarps for this very reason. If your sleeping bag gets wet, wrap in a wool or fleece blanket, then a tarp or emergency bivvy. This method can help you retain critical body heat even if your main gear fails. In the field, quick thinking and adaptability are just as important as the gear itself. Practice these techniques before you need them, so you'll know exactly what to do when conditions turn harsh. In a car during a winter storm, use an emergency blanket and a plastic mat to create a warm shelter, block drafts with extra clothing or floor mats, and insulate yourself from the cold car seat. Even in urban environments, these principles apply. Your car can become a lifeline if you know how to use what's available to stay warm and dry. At home in a blackout, a wool blanket and rain jacket can make a big difference. Layer up, close off unused rooms, and use curtains or towels to block drafts from windows and doors. These small steps, combined with the two-layer system, can help you and your family stay safe and comfortable until the power returns. Key lessons: stay dry, create an air gap, and use a two-part system. The air gap between layers acts as extra insulation, trapping warmth and preventing heat loss. Always avoid sweating, as moisture can quickly chill your body. Adjust your layers as needed to regulate your temperature and stay comfortable. This method, tested in war, works when your life is on the line. Soldiers in extreme conditions relied on these techniques to survive freezing nights and harsh environments. Their experience shows that even the simplest materials, used wisely, can be the difference between life and death. Learning it empowers you for any cold weather emergency. Practice these skills with friends or family, and teach others what you've learned. The more people who know how to stay warm and dry, the safer your community will be in any crisis. The soldiers of World War II learned it the hard way. We can learn it the smart way. By studying their experiences and adapting their methods with modern materials, we gain a powerful advantage. Preparation and knowledge are your best tools in any survival situation. Simple, effective, and essential for real-world survival. Mastering these techniques means you're ready for whatever winter throws your way. Whether you're outdoors, on the road, or at home, stay prepared, stay safe, and remember, survival is about using what you know, not just what you have.